Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast, the podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and in this week's episode, I'm talking with Karen, who tells about the ups and downs of her life and how they affected not just her weight, but her general well-being, and how sugar, menopause, and intermittent fasting are part of her story. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. Come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. All right, here's my chat with Karen. All right, so I'm talking today with Karen, who's in Winnipeg, Canada. And Karen, can you tell us a little bit about your background with food and sugar, especially?
Absolutely. So I was a skinny kid. I had no issues with my weight all through childhood, my adolescence, my young adulthood. I was tall and lean. I had good genes. I came from a family of very tall, lean people, and it just wasn't something that was on my radar. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, so ultra-processed food and sugar was definitely part of our diet, but I don't think it really leaned towards too many TV dinners or things. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and we had lots of good food as well. So I never really had an issue with sugar that was problematic, or certainly one that I needed to do something about.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the best way to put it is that the path to my current lifestyle of no sugar and intermittent fasting, as you know, that's how you and I kind of connected.
Right.
It took me about 10 years to travel and come to the right place and choices for where my body has led me now at age 59.
Okay, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, during the last 10 years, I've really experienced a combination of persistent weight gain and then coupled with chronic inflammation, stiffness, and just many other minor yet annoying health issues that honestly, they kept getting progressively worse. And that situation was coupled with some major life events during that time period that caused, stress for me. But because of the negativity around those things, I also had an unwillingness on my part to do anything concrete about the first 2 issues.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all that to say is those things all culminated in like a big wake-up call for me and a no turning back moment that happened in May of this year. So just getting back to my progression through adulthood, as I mentioned, I was very lean. I had 2 pregnancies in my late 20s, early 30s, and I gained 30, 35 pounds with each baby, but I easily lost it after I had my children.
Lucky.
I was lucky, yeah. And I was one of these people, my girlfriends we were getting older, and they would always curse me because I could eat whatever I wanted and I stayed trim.
Yeah.
Then there was a brief period in my early 40s. I wasn't in menopause or perimenopause yet, but my mom was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And through that and her subsequent passing, I probably gained about 20 pounds just because of stress and emotional eating.
Yeah.
After she passed, I wanted to get rid of that. And at that time, it was when low carb and Atkins was all the rage. So I tried it and it worked very, very well for me. And it was then I started to have the first clues that carbs, refined carbohydrates, and sugar, my body didn't like it,
Mm.
but I still liked sugar.
Yeah.
So I got rid of that weight and I probably stayed very slim and healthy and active, and I felt good in my body until about age 50. And then menopause hit me like a ton of bricks.
Mhm.
It was really dramatic. I had very strong, extreme symptoms of, hot flashes all day, during the day, all night, keeping me awake. And then I had a very bad bout of frozen shoulder that was excruciating. That lasted about 7 to 10 months. And it was like my body aged 20 years overnight when I turned 50, 51.
Wow.
Yeah, everything hurt. And then I started to gain weight again. It was during this particular period of time I also lost my job. It was a career I loved, a team I loved, and I totally saw myself continuing to rise up the corporate ladder and being there for another 10 years and going gracefully into my retirement, that I'd worked very hard. So losing that role through downsizing, as I said, I became quite depressed and did some more emotional eating and drinking, um, and caused further weight gain.
Hmm.
Within about a year, I managed to find good employment elsewhere, and I kind of got back on my feet in that regard. But by this time, all my lovely, fitted, tailored, beautiful clothes I had curated over many years, I couldn't get into anything. My
Hmm.
skirts, my jackets, and it made me sad looking at them in my closet and
Yeah.
going to this new job and having to buy, larger sizes. But I thought, well, I'm 53 now. I'm going to be bigger in certain places on my body. And this is just the way it is when you become a menopausal woman.
Mm.
I think I was now about 25, 30 pounds overweight. And I didn't really watch what was on the scale. I just kind of ignored it and thought, well, this is it. Then, about 18 months after that, what happened? COVID hit.
Yep.
Yay! We all get to stay home and wear stretchy pants
Hmm.
and loose sweatshirts, which I did because I worked at a desk and I could do my job from home.
Hmm.
And I probably gained another 10 pounds.
Hmm. Which is pretty good because they call it the COVID-15.
Yes, and maybe it was more, I don't know. I again wasn't paying attention because I think I was kind of in denial.
Hmm.
Um, And then when the world finally started getting back to normal, oh, woo, now we can socialize again. We can have parties. We can have our friends over. We can, host dinner parties and make all the good foods and eat all the good things. And I did that and probably packed on maybe another 5 pounds.
Mm.
And then my father passed away.
Mm.
And the stress of that event gave me a new excuse. It was very stressful, and there was a lot of fallout with family members in the aftermath of his passing. And yeah, I got quite upset about a number of things on an emotional level. And I probably started pouring myself too many cocktails every evening. And
Mm.
my relationship with alcohol actually became pretty unhealthy.
Okay.
So, all that weight gain and poor choices in terms of my diet and drinking, they were now causing not only the weight gain, but chronic issues like acid reflux and then increased inflammation, stiffness, arthritis, aches and pains that just they weren't normal for my age. Um, and I'd always kind of had lower back pain too. I'm very tall, I'm 6 feet tall,
Mm.
and none of my desks at work and my chairs were designed to keep me comfortable. And I did some slouching, and in 30 years working at a desk job, I paid a price.
Mhm.
So added my extra weight and my inflammation from my poor diet, I my back pain got worse and worse and worse. So at age 58 last year, I woke up every morning feeling 20 years older than I was. And I thought to myself, oh, if this is how I feel at 58, how bad is it going to be when I'm 68
Yeah.
and 78?
Yep.
And I knew I had to change something. I just it was really my first kind of I started to wake up to the reality of this. In January and February of this year, 2024, I started thinking hard about how I wanted to go about this. And I thought, oh, I could do low carb again. It worked for me back in the day. But then I thought, I think there's more to it than that. I don't know. So I started Googling around about different diets and approaches, right?
Hmm.
Um, I didn't really want to go on a diet, and I didn't want to start working out because I was heavy and I felt stiff in store, and I didn't want to hurt more than I already hurt.
Yeah.
So I wondered more, how could I move away from all my bad snacking habits and my nightly cocktails without it feeling like deprivation and punishment, right? That I'd been a bad girl and now I had to be super strict. But the more I thought about it, I became curious about how I could just maybe eat more mindfully and teach myself more about how my body as a menopausal woman, what it actually needed as good fuel, and how my own desire to take control over how I would age going forward was in my hands, but I needed the right tools.
Yeah.
I also thought about hunger. What does hunger really mean? And I was starting to pay attention to how mindlessly I was always eating. And I thought to myself, had I ever really experienced true hunger? And the answer was no, never. I
Absolutely.
led a
Not
very,
in this
no,
society.
I've lived a very abundant, privileged life and access to every kind of food whenever I wanted it. I ate according to my whims, not an actual need for my body to be nourished and to give myself fuel and energy.
Hmm.
So another couple months went by, and I'm still thinking about this, but not really doing anything about it. The wheels were turning in my head louder and louder. And every time I struggled to reach past my big menopause belly to tie my shoes
Mm.
or cover up my girth with even larger size clothing, uh, I knew the time was coming fast. Then, I think it was end of May of this year, I had to go to my doctor for my annual physical. And I had not been looking at the scale every time I'd gone prior to this because I did not want to know the number. I didn't
Yeah.
look. And I did the same thing this time. I still wasn't ready to face it. But I think something intervened because as the medical assistant led me to the exam room after she weighed me, she made a movement with her hand and she had a sticky note in it that she slapped on the outside of the exam door. And on it, she had written my name, my age, and my weight, presumably for the doctor to know who they were seeing before they entered the room.
Hmm.
And because her arm movement caught my hand, I looked at that sticky note and I saw the number.
Uh-oh.
And it was horrifying. I had no idea that I was that heavy.
Hmm.
So that's my long story to tell you that it was that moment everything changed for me.
Because
It
you
put
saw it. You saw it
I
written down.
saw it written down. I wasn't still excusing myself and making excuses in my mind that this was just my fate. And I was now 58. I'm in full-blown menopause. There's nothing I can do. I'm not going to kill myself with calories in, calories out. Forget it. No, I saw that number and I thought, uh-uh, no way.
Mhm.
I got a good bill of health from my doctor. I did say to her, I think I need to lose some weight. And she didn't really say, oh, you definitely do. She said, yeah, you probably would benefit from that.
Mhm.
Even so, I drove home. I was working from home that day. My husband is retired. And I sat him down. I said to him, dear, tomorrow is big changes for me. And I told him, I'm doing 4 things. I am quitting drinking, full stop. I am cutting out all sugars, all starches, all carbs, refined or not. I'm going to do a detox. I'm going to concentrate on eating whole, healthy foods. And I'm not going to eat anything after 7 p.m.
Whoa, that is a lot of changes.
Yes, it was. But I was determined and
Mm.
I did it
Wow. Straight away, just like that.
just like that. And even I couldn't believe that I was doing it.
I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
Within 2 weeks, I lost 10 pounds.
Wow.
And I know, I bet you 99% of it was water because I was just that inflamed.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so motivating. I felt so much better so quickly, just getting the scale down that much. And already I could feel my body being able to, it just felt better. I could feel the detoxification. And I mean, my sugar consumption, it's not that it was super high in terms of sweets or chocolates. That wasn't really ever my core addiction. It was the sugar in the tonic water of my gin and tonics.
Ah.
High fructose corn syrup. I mean, tonic water, most people think it's not that sweet, and it isn't. It's kind of on the tart side, but it still has lots of refined carbs. And
Uh-huh.
when I looked at the labels, 33 grams a can. And I would
Whoa.
have 2 or 3 every night.
Whoa.
It was like injecting liquid sugar into my veins, and I would do it in the evenings before bed. Well, what happens, right? I'm spiking my glucose right before I go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
My body has no chance for its insulin to go down. All things I've since learned by joining the intermittent fasting group, by adopting Jen Stevens' recommendations for the clean fast, and again, staying away from carbs.
Wow. And do you still stay away from all carbs, whole or processed?
Not at all. I have definitely reincorporated complex carbs into my diet. Absolutely, all the good things. The no carb detox that I put myself on, I probably stuck to that for a solid 6 weeks
Okay.
just to get me released of all of that. And I really think that set me up for success. But no, my diet is very healthy, and I think it's very diverse and has all the good things that I need. But I will say that ultra processed foods are just not part of what I want in my house. I don't want them in my pantry. I don't want them on my plate. And I'm just so convinced that hidden sugars and blatant sugars are doing all of us a huge disservice in terms of our health.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Yeah, you're singing to the choir here.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
That's what
and
you.
I'm curious to know, it sounds like you and I both kind of stumbled across or upon intermittent fasting after we'd cut sugar or processed carbs. Was that right for you?
Yes, it was because I had heard about intermittent fasting, but I didn't know enough about it to understand why it might work or even how it worked. And it really wasn't until I was about 6 weeks into my own designed regimen of restriction that I started getting tired of kind of counting calories. And then I had heard about some experts saying the whole calories in, calories out is not really the right formula, and it can
Hmm.
lead to weight gain because you're, lowering your own metabolism. So I became curious about that. And, we all Google stuff. And in my Googling, intermittent fasting came up again. And on one of my searches, the first result was Fast Feast Repeat, the book by Jen Stevens. And I think I ordered it the next day and I listened to it on Audible within 2 days. And I was just like, all these light bulbs started going off. And I thought, okay, I think I'm going to pivot away from counting calories and just cutting out sugar and try this too. So I adopted the clean fast as Jen recommended. And I read even more. I read Jason Fung's obesity code. And
Yep.
again, the whole sugar, glucose, insulin, how our hunger and satiety are all linked to how our hormones operate. It's like, what? Why didn't I know this?
Yeah, why doesn't anyone tell us this?
Exactly. And I wish my friends would have known about it, or my mom dieted a lot. She had a different, I said my family was all tall and lean, but that was my dad and my brothers and me. But my mom, who was shorter and heavier, she did struggle with weight and was always, depriving herself and smaller portions. And I was like, oh, if only my mom was still alive and she could just fast, she'd be so much, yeah, it would have been a real game changer for so many of us, men and women. And here's
Mhm.
another interesting thing. I've been doing intermittent fasting for 6 months now, and my husband started to model me after about the first month I was doing the clean fast. And he, just from modeling me, not really paying too much attention to what he was doing, but just following my lead, he dropped 26 pounds. Boom.
Whoa.
Yep,
Wow.
and he loves it, and he preaches about it to everybody he can talk to, how it's this magic formula. But we also, both of us, talk a lot about sugar, and he has a sweet tooth that can get him in trouble more so than me. He likes his desserts and his treats and his cookies, but if we don't have it in the house, he's been able to resist that, temptation he has usually fallen prey to in the past. So yeah, we're
Mhm.
both doing great. I'm down almost 40 pounds. I'm basically at my goal weight in 6 months flat. And
Wow.
I still pinch myself every day. I can't believe it.
Wow, that is amazing. And such an amazing mindset shift as well as weight
Mhm.
shift, because we tend to focus on weight loss, but I really think it all starts in between your ears, in your head.
It does. And I just needed to get myself there.
Hmm.
I think because I spent my first 45 years of life never worrying about my weight, that when the weight gain happened, I just thought, well, why can't I just get rid of it like I always got rid of it? I shouldn't have to do anything. Wouldn't
Yeah,
isn't my metabolism I'm born with, isn't that going to take me all the way to 80 or 90? No, apparently not, because menopause does cause a lot of issues.
true.
And the loss of estrogen, I understand. And I think it was on one of the podcasts you had that I listened to. You had a guest on, I'm sorry, I forget her name, but she was a functional nutritionist, and she talked about how the loss of estrogen is very key to sugar sensitivity,
Yep.
right? And
Yes.
I remember hearing that and going, well, that makes perfect sense. As soon as my estrogen, I started losing it, what I could normally eat in the past, I couldn't anymore. I couldn't get away with it anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and that's really common actually.
Yeah. And my message that I really want to share with women my age is that you don't have to be a victim of what you think is the doomed state of menopause. You can get your waistline back. You can feel the age you are. You don't have to feel old and stiff and sore and tired and inflamed, but you do maybe have to think differently about how you approach what you eat. And for me, I know sugar and refined carbs, my body doesn't like it. And I'm doing so well on high protein, high good dietary fat, and lots of fiber.
Yeah,
The
fantastic.
better news than the scale news for me is that a lot of those chronic health issues are disappeared. I have no acid reflux anymore, none. I
Hmm.
feel super flexible and limber. My aches and pains have been reduced down to about, maybe 10% of what they were. I feel motivated to exercise now that I didn't before. And back to the scale part, all my beautiful clothes, they fit again. Some are even
Yes.
loose now.
Oh wow. It's amazing that we find this amazing, and not to take away from the amazingness of what you have achieved, but it's almost as if we have normalized getting old before our time,
Agreed.
and that the whole concept of not just what we eat, but when we eat, like in intermittent fasting, it's almost as if that by the diet industry doesn't even count.
And it's not even, yeah, proposed as a possibility. But
Mhm.
if you really think about our ancestors and how they ate, even a generation or two ago, it was you ate at mealtime. You didn't eat all day long. You weren't driving around with a hot coffee full of whipped cream and pumpkin spice latte. Not at all, right?
Yeah,
And then the ancestors before that, if they woke up in the morning, they probably didn't have a bagel they could pop in the toaster. They had to go out and hunt for food. And that was mostly animal protein. And
yeah,
if they couldn't catch anything, they probably had to forage for berries or plants and eat that. The whole sugar as a normal part of our diet, the first thing that goes into our stomachs in the morning with our coffee, and the last thing that we're giving us before we put our head on the pillow, it's a recipe for disaster.
yeah, yeah. I have to agree there. And, and apparently it's not just in Canada or the States or North America or even Europe. It is worldwide where this way of eating that makes us old before our time, overweight and sick and, with stiff
Mhm.
joints and everything else you were describing, that is now considered normal.
That's right. And I know working in the biomedical research industry that there's so many people who were looking at um, solutions, pharmaceutical solutions for chronic inflammation, obesity, metabolic dysfunction, instead of saying, hey, wait, just stop eating around the clock.
Mm,
Re- Close your windows and focus on whole healthy foods, and the magic starts to happen. It
totally.
really does. And I tell my friends who have noticed my success how easy it is. Because, yes, I felt I was pretty disciplined in the start because I was just so motivated to make a change. But as you know, Jen Stevens' recommendation for the clean fast, once you get past a certain point, it becomes very easy. Like you build like your fasting muscle.
Yeah.
So going a whole day. Like I'm now fully fasted and it's 2 p.m. my time, and I'm going to be opening my window shortly. And then I will start by, focusing on vegetables or my dinner, and then I might still have a sweet something. Like I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that I never touch any sugar. That's not true. Of course I do. I think I avoid hidden sugars and I'm not consuming sugar daily for sure, but it's not like I'm never going to have a piece of chocolate cake again.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to have a shortbread cookie or two at Christmas because I will. But if I'm 85 to 90% consistent with my other habits every week, then having those treats in the form of sugar or other, carbohydrate. I also like crunchy, cheesy chips.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a bit of my favorites that I don't consume as much of, but I won't deny myself them.
Sure.
So it's just that overall balance.
Yeah, yeah, it's that feeling of denial that, we want to get away from. And that also, I think, is a mindset shift. And that sort of, I don't know where it comes from, but I think the diet culture, this necessity to be perfect about everything, let go of that, especially in our 50s. And it feels to me like you have found a balance that's right for you.
I think I have. And to me, Netta, this is like a bell that has rung that I can't unhear anymore.
Hmm.
I just can't not know about how sugar and refined carbohydrates affects my glucose. And when my glucose is spiked, my pancreas releases insulin. And if I'm in a high state of insulin production all the time, I'm going to stay in fat storage mode. And now that I know that, I just can't ever see myself going back. It's like I always knew there were ways to lose weight, but I didn't know how or why they worked. And for
Hmm.
my kind of mind, the way I like to understand things, I need to know the why. And now that I know the why, I don't think I can ever drift back because I go to the grocery store now and I stay on the outside of the grocery store in my purchases. I avoid all things that come in a package and have a long list of ingredients, mostly of things I can't even pronounce. That to me is it's poison for me. It's not natural, it's not healthy, and it's nowhere where I ever want to go again.
Yeah, that sums it up beautifully. Yes. And it's not that whole switch from calories in, calories out, and all to do with calories to insulin. How much does this spike my insulin? And let's keep this insulin low. And of course, intermittent fasting, it's keeping it super low because it's not being stimulated at all. That mindset shift, it's like the holy grail for weight loss, but not just for weight loss, just for feeling less, right? You feel less hungry less often.
You do, and you don't need it. And my husband and I have been saying to each other so many times, probably once a day, having done this together now and having so much success. I think we've lost 60 pounds between the two of us. I think actually maybe more than like 70. We always say, this is magic. It's so
Mhm.
easy. We still can eat. We're still enjoying life, but we don't need to eat all the time.
Yeah.
We probably ate and snacked way too much, and we've gone from mindless eating to mindful eating and
Mm.
adjusted our eating windows. And it's good. We're full of energy. We feel better. And it just has changed our lives. Absolutely changed our lives.
Fantastic, fantastic. What an inspiring message. And thank you for sharing it. And I hope it does inspire those listening that, some people imagine that life after sugar, as I call it, is sad and grey and full of
I
deprivation.
would say the opposite. It's
Oh,
actually way happier because you just feel so much better.
yeah. Yes. Well, thank you for echoing my message so eloquently.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And thank you again for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Karen. Oh, I love this chat with Karen because it goes to show how, over time, especially when menopause hits, what worked before doesn't necessarily work now. And we could say that for any stage in your life. Adolescence, when you go off to college, when you get married, or when you have babies. Whatever stage in your life, your body doesn't always respond in the same way. But one thing's for sure, eating sugar certainly doesn't help. And in Karen's situation, intermittent fasting was the key for her. And I would argue that being open-minded enough to step out of that calories in, calories out diet mentality was also the key for her. And that's exactly my approach in the Freedom from Cravings Formula program. In the program, I don't tell you what to eat or what not to eat, or when to eat, or how often to eat, or which foods are good or bad. What I do is to encourage you to think and to question what you've been told and what you've always done that may not work for you anymore. Because when you get to that level of awareness and when you're able to decide for yourself rather than being told what to do by me or by anyone else, including the diet culture, then you're in a far more powerful position to find what works for you. And giving you this personal power back is exactly why I created the Freedom from Cravings Formula program. And this program is customized and personalized for you. It's specifically designed by me to help you get rid of cravings so that you can slim down and finally feel in control around food, especially sugar. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of a restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life where you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can hop on a free clarity call with me at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on the big green button, Book a Clarity Call. We'll have a quick 30-minute one-on-one chat where you'll be able to tell me more about your challenges and goals, and we'll be able to see how the Freedom from Cravings Formula program can help you. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.